great reproach of the devil is that he was created so that God would be visible. Because when everything is white, you don't see anything. White has no color if it's alone.
Actor and novelist Sir Peter Ustinov today on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson. British-born Peter Ustinov was a great actor. He was a versatile, multi-talented, multi-award-winning actor. Classic movie buffs will remember him for Spartacus and Top Copy, both of which earned him an Oscar, but also Quo Vadis, The Sundowners, Hot Millions. Now, acting was only part of his portfolio, though, because Sir Peter Ustinov was also a director, a popular raconteur, and a pretty good novelist, as it turns out. In fact, both of the times that I met and interviewed him, it was to talk about a work of fiction that he had penned, including the one you're about to hear from 1991. That was the year that Peter Ustinov wrote a satire, a book imagining what would happen if God and the devil both took on human form to go on kind of a fact-finding mission in the modern-day world. The book was called The Old Man and Mr. Smith. Now, Peter Ustinov always described himself as a secular humanist, so perhaps his portrayals of God and the devil reflect that philosophy. But in any case, I think you'll find, as I did, that he's a delightful interview. In just a moment, our conversation.
We're about to take a step back and listen to an iconic voice from our recent past. It's one of over 10,000 interviews noted radio personality Bill Thompson did over a 30-year span. We think you'll enjoy it.
So here now from 1991, Sir Peter Ustinov.
Well, it's an unambitious book about God and the devil and Satan, who meet for the first time since the fall from grace in Washington, which they both heard is the most influential capital at this moment. And they make their first mistake in trying to get into a hotel room without luggage. They'd forgotten that you need, or they never knew that you needed luggage. It wasn't like that in prehistory.
Wouldn't God, the omniscient ruler of the universe, know that you need luggage?
No, I think what becomes abundantly clear is that they've already made an enormous effort to squeeze themselves into human form in order to pass relatively unnoticed. But that God says, I hope rather touchingly at one point, I admit that we are immortal, but that doesn't alter the aging process. And by now, God has his eye firmly on every horizon available and is quite capable of looking beyond it. He's not quite so sure of himself this side of the horizon. And he's even made several mistakes during the creation. There was the worst plague ever to afflict humanity before any of us became, or recorded history began, when he created fowl that flew, chicken and cocks that flew about crowing over the landscape and keeping people awake at all hours of the day or night. And that is the reason now that they don't fly anymore, so that they're locked in one place and they only really affect the immediate vicinity.
I also wondered, are we ready for a devil, a Mr. Smith, that is at times likable?
Oh, I don't see why not. I've never understood why not, because the great reproach of the devil is that he was created so that God would be visible. Because when everything is white, you don't see anything. White has no color if it's alone.
That's very profound.
Oh, well, I'm glad you think so. And so black was created in order to show white up. And I think there has to be not exactly a collusion, but at least an affinity between the two. They must be interdependent, which is a very good word for the times we live in. And that was my idea. And Satan says, after he's got rid of his reproach to God for having pushed him overboard, he admits that if he hadn't been pushed, he'd have gone anyway. His inclinations tended towards the darker part of man's nature.
I was pleasantly puzzled along the way as to how different your perceptions of God and the devil are from what the standard, prescribed, dogmatic Catholic and Protestant visions of God and the devil are.
Yes.
You've really made me think.
I'm very glad, because I'm also very puzzled that in England we suddenly started selling an awful lot of copies to members of the Unitarian Church. Apparently something in there corresponds to their doctrines, or their sentiments at least. And I wasn't dreaming of that effect. And I'm very puzzled and charmed and touched at the same time, because it's made me find out what a Unitarian is. Because there are so many denominations, one really doesn't know normally.
Why did the old man and Mr. Smith decide to embark upon this fact-finding tour together?
I think they've been missing each other. After all, the fall from grace took place an awful long time ago. Lots of things have happened, and they're no longer quite secure in their jobs. The fact that Mr. Smith, who's the devil, the reason for that name is that when he tried to check in at the hotel, before he could answer, God said his name was Smith. And the concierge said, usually in hotels, Mr. Smith is accompanied by Mrs. Smith. God says, well, not in this instant. And afterwards, Satan is absolutely furious. He said, what is this nonsense of imposing this idiotic name on me? And God says, listen, I had enough trouble with my own identity. I wasn't going to go into all that again. So it's the God and the devil are trying to accommodate themselves to human usages and finding it extremely difficult. They even take the Concorde at one point to fly from America to England, and God says he wouldn't have taken it if he knew how slow it was. But they're trying to really integrate with humanity in order to understand humanity better.
Do God and the devil take on some human foibles and characteristics when they assume human shape?
Well, when they arrive, they don't need to eat and they don't need to sleep. They're above all that. Gradually, they begin to even in India, in the end, the devil is horrified to see that he has gashes on his legs from various prickly plants that he's been wading through, and he's never seen blood before, not like that. And they become, simply by virtue of being on the earth and adapting themselves to human conditions, they really become almost human, and that's the reason they have to go back. They said, this is too dangerous now. And they sleep, too. It is a lady of the night who is the first man to succeed in getting the devil to sleep, because it's so boring. The whole process of commercial love. And of course, the devil can no longer feel responsible for things like nuclear weapons, because it gives him no joy at all. He says, where's the pleasure in that? It's the same, it's a continuation of the same thing that made him fall asleep with a prostitute. Because he's bored with soulless things. There's nothing to tempt.
The speech that he makes when he is with the lady, if we may call her that, about the lack of passion anymore, that there is, that she runs through this litany of services available to him at the various prices, and he's not so much disgusted, but he's bored, isn't he?
Yeah, he's bored. He doesn't understand anybody who does things without a love of their work. After all, that's the whole, even Casanova, it's a love of telling fibs about it. At least there's some energy, some passion there, but just to produce a tariff rate, like a menu in a restaurant, is really sickening. And of course, his money is stolen while he's asleep.
Why would he be surprised that his money is stolen?
Well, he's not surprised that his money is stolen, but he's very surprised that he slept. After all, it's his first experience of it.
After this short break, Peter Ustinov imagines a scenario where God may tell a fib.
Are you enjoying this conversation so far? And would you like to get a copy of the book we're talking about?
Just tap the link in our show notes or visit our website heardeverything.com.
When you make a purchase through our affiliate links, you're also supporting this podcast.
And we thank you for your support.
Now back to my 1991 conversation with Sir Peter Ustinov.
And God fibs. God tells white lies.
Yeah, because he's in human form. He says it's inevitable. You can't avoid it. If you don't want to drag a conversation out to interminable length, you have to tell little lies.
The story in the ward where the gentleman gets his glasses stolen, and God is trying to debate with himself as to whether he should just tell the man the truth or tell him a white lie and end the conversation right there. Because the Bible tells us we must not lie. We must not.
That's right. Yes.
It's wrong to lie.
Absolutely, and also the whole structure of deity from the beginning. The first intrepid Greek who got to the top of Mount Olympus and found there was nothing there, and then didn't know what to do with the information, going down and had the misfortune after 2 days of miserable silence of telling a priest at that time, and the priest said, "This must go no further. Do you swear not to tell anyone?" "Yes, of course I swear it." "How can I trust you once you've told me?" And the man's body is found in a ravine a little later.
Where is the dividing line between a fable, a fascinating, profound little story, and blasphemy?
Well, I think personally it's the spirit in which the thing is done. The little boy in Brussels who is relieving himself in public and is almost the little statue, which is a famous symbol, as famous for Brussels as the Eiffel Tower is for Paris. That really never offends anybody because it's done with a certain amount of charm. I think even Michelangelo doing a figure of a gentleman doing that would probably be more liable to give offense. So that it's the attitude. If the attitude, I think, is reverent towards the unknown, at least, and has a sense of balance, I don't think it can be accounted blasphemy, really. Because you can't help liking these two. There's no malice attached to them. They have their own tendencies and so on. But the old man, I hope, is a man who, he's not a man at all. He spends his time, he says, as a kind of sheet over the landscape, which can adapt itself to all sorts of forms and has a soul. But his attitude inside the body of the old man, in which he feels comfortable, also wears out when they're at one moment transmogrified into hornets. The devil is terribly unhappy because he feels as he flies as a hornet that his life is draining away because life expectancy is so short and he's nothing in his nostrils but various smells of pollen. As he passes, he says, it's so limiting. And even to be to be in human form is limiting. And you've got two scenes at the end which you probably haven't reached yet. One in Japan and one in India, which are really the culminating things in which the Japanese by now are beginning to penetrate many of the secrets of the universe by purely brilliant electronic and technical means. And there's an old man with about 2 million employees, miserable old man who lives in abject poverty, although he owns so many factories, with nothing on the wall except 40 television sets, which are always in the recreation rooms or canteens of his factories, so that he can see who is still drinking sake when they should be back at work, and therefore has cause to find these people. I mean, a real human misery in a sense, but who's so near his factories are to the secret of eternal life. He said, give it 5 more years and we'll have it. There'll be no more needs. And in point of fact, his poles are not good and evil, but efficiency and inefficiency, which is what it's become. And then the Indians, who have got nothing, but who've reached the same degree of vision by going back into themselves. And one of the Indian wise men says, I am capable now of having an evening meal of a blade of grass and identifying all the myriad of different tastes in one blade of grass. I wouldn't dream of taking 2 blades of grass. That would be gluttony. And they've done it, and they've made their sensibility, human sensibilities, far in advance of ours, because they can just sit there with nothing in their stomachs, lip reading over the curve of the horizon, hearing things, conversations miles away, and when the devil at the end steals a television set because he wants to take one with him in case it works, these gurus appear on every channel, although the thing is not plugged in. They're just on the same wavelength, and that's one of the reasons why God and Satan have to go back to their own domains. They can no longer afford to stray on Earth. Once really electronic means which are beyond the capabilities of the FBI and Norman Schwarzkopf, really, I mean, of such sophistication simply because it's through self-denial, starvation, and that sort of hallucination. These Indian wise men are very, very, very near discovering who these 2 people are. And at the end, when the devil's empty shell, it's like a skin which has been shed by a snake, is floating down the Ganges, still clutching the outer shape of a television set. The valves and things have gone. The Indian wise man says, we were very near great discoveries, but we must be thankful we have not discovered them, since this will enable us to go on being holy men untroubled. And meanwhile, an expert in the CIA is taking photographs through a telescopic lens from the bank.
Peter Ustinov died in 2004 at age 82. Now you can get your copy of The Old Man and Mr. Smith by Peter Ustinov by tapping the link in our show notes, by clicking the link in the description below if you're watching this on YouTube, or by going to our website, heardeverything.com. We may earn an Amazon commission if you make a purchase. HeardEverything.com is where you can also find my 2006 interview with the author of another book that imagined something similar, what would happen if Jesus returned to modern-day America. My 2006 conversation with novelist Tony Hendra.
It seems to me inconceivable that Christ, who obviously was a great preacher, did not crack the odd joke from time to time. I mean, all great public speakers know how to do that, you know. I mean, I've often thought that somewhere buried in the gospel there might be some one-liners.
And my 1992 conversation with another veteran and revered British-born actor, Sir Michael Caine.
I should really have given up if I had any sense. Fortunately, I haven't got any sense. As a matter of fact, I do believe that I am slightly off my rocker.
And of course, we post new episodes of Now I've Heard Everything every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and you can find us wherever you find podcasts. And thank you so much for listening. Next time on Now I've Heard Everything, with all the fuss right now about this jumbo jet that's being gifted to the president from the government of Qatar to be used as Air Force One, let's revisit the history of Air Force One and the presidents who've used them. My 2003 conversation with journalist Kenneth Walsh.
Each president can be himself. They travel endless hours with trusted friends and advisors, and so they can't really keep their guard up for very long. So the people around them get to see them as they really are.
That's next time on Now I've Heard Everything. I'm Bill Thompson.